these are the new shiny ones, but I did notice that you've got a Gen 2 engine in there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you want to come have a look?
Go and compare notes with the new
We've
one.
got another engine room in there, Mark, where we've got 3 engine assembly rooms here. So here it is.
The DJR engine, hey?
The DJR engine, yeah, probably one of the engines out of Will or Anton's cars from last year.
Okay.
As you can see, it's a work of art. You know, a lot of work had to go into maintain these engines, hence why one of the reasons we've gone on to Gen 3 to try and simplify things. You know, like the amount of work in these throttle bodies, the upkeep and so forth. And
yeah.
you know, like these things will do around 4,000 k's and they've got to have a major overhaul. Where, we're looking there, 10,000 k's, you know, we're trying to reduce costs in the sport, but you know, and like these things here with all what they are, 650, 655 horsepower. These things are a hell of a lot cheaper, 625 to 630.
And I mean, just looking at this here, I mean, obviously, like they're like a motorsport block.
Yeah.
But you know, just from the outset, looking at it, it's the billet heads, got the independent throttle bodies, and a lot of things to go wrong, really.
Yes,
whereas that's just
correct.
Off-the-shelf throttle body on it. Yeah.
Correct. Like a lot, and it's the cost factor of the upkeep of this engine is one of the main reasons we've gone for the Coyote. Plus, you got like a 1955 architecture block.
Yeah.
So now we've gone to the year, you know, 2023, the block from there, and as I say, these are just a lot of upkeep.
With this, I mean, you mentioned that obviously Tickford did their own engines, DJR did their own engines, but now, from a parity point of view, which is a big word that everyone's always using for this sort of racing, you're doing all the Ford engines.
Yeah, correct.
Which is this one here.
Correct,
so I mean, this engine here, basically,
everything's the same.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So no one has an advantage over the other team.
Yep.
So everyone's engine is identical.
Yep.
They have to be maintained by us. That's one of the things that has to come back to us for looking at. But basically, when we dyno them, if they're within 1 or 2 horsepower of each other, then they go up to supercars to be validated and then sent off to the teams.
And I guess the other thing, just noticing, like you mentioned before, stuff like the fuel rails and bits and pieces, like essentially it's almost like a factory engine, but there are some of your parts on there. I did spot that you've got some bits and pieces on the bench over there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we have to make a number of things to make this thing fit the supercar chassis properly, etc. So we're pretty fortunate. We have some good engineers that we work with at different places. So all this stuff's been basically made by DJR and the DJR machine shop for us.
Yep.
So we have, like, that's obviously our oil filter adapter, our thermostat housing, another thing for the bottom, I think it's the bottom radiator hose. Here again, to get the throttle body on the right angle, there needs to be a wedge made up to bring the throttle body up to basically meet up with the airbox.
Yep.
And then there's another adapter that goes on to adapt it to the airbox. Fuel rails, what we've done with the fuel rails we thought was pretty smart. We have Motec ignition modules, we built them in so they actually screw to the thing, but they mount on all the factory points.
Yeah, beautiful.
Try and use as much, what we can, try and use Australian manufacturing as much as we can.
I know that you've got engine dynos here, so I'm pretty keen to see one of these things make a bit of noise.
We've actually got 3 dyno cells, which is pretty rare. I think we've got most dynos in the country. What we got here, Mark, we've actually built one room dedicated to Gen 3, so we can swap engines in and out. In our build, we're doing up to 2 engines a day, doing break-in and so forth. So we've made it runs all genuine Gen 3 header system and exhaust system. Yep. Well, we can have these in and running in about 30 minutes. Everything's nice and cold. You can put an engine on the dyno and away you go in about 30 minutes flat.
All right, what's next, Rob?
So come this way, mate. We've, I think Kaz is in here now doing a set of cylinder heads. And pretty cool thing we got here is this DTS machine, which as you can see, let me get the camera in here and have a bit of a look and video this. Kaz, just to give a little bit of explanation of what you're actually doing here.
So basically it checks the spring pressures at the installed height in the cylinder head. It also checks the spring pressure at the full lift and also a coil bind as well. It will measure the length of coil bind and also the pressure as well.
And I guess, I mean, how important is that for something that's going to be working so hard throughout a race? And
it's extremely important. Too much or too little either way, you know, will have repercussions. Too much valve spring pressure, obviously you can wear seats or valves or something like that. Too little, you can have valve plug. So yeah, really important.
And the good thing about it gets stored in the computer, so we can go back, like every set of springs we use, every set of cylinder heads we do this same test on. As you can see, it's all fully automatic. So there's a lot of tools in here, Mark, that we really don't use much now in Gen 3. But you know, we've got our mill, we've got our lathe, we've got our Sun and Hone, we've got our Conrod machine, we've got the Epoch. Have you ever seen one of these? It's a computer controlled valve cutting machine.
Yep.
So it will cut every valve seat identical. You can do wonders with that machine. But one of the things that probably is a good thing to point out, we use the Superflow flow bench a fair whack in developing the throttle map for the Gen 3 to understand when we put that restrictor on it. There's a restrictor that goes onto the throttle body for that, to try and understand the airflow and how much air could run through this. So the guys actually hooked up Motec as it was, and we measured all the airflow coming through here, which made our map up for the throttle control. Because a lot of the drivers were complaining about, they're used to having a one-on-one throttle with a cable with the 8 trumpet throttle bodies. Now you've got a delay because you've got one throttle body not going directly into the ports.
Yep.
So the guys spent a lot of time on here. I reckon they probably spent a day and a half, two guys, and worked out this mapping. And once they used this and put it into the Motec, we went out testing, that was night and day. It was this tool really come in handy for us.
All right, so Rob, we've been looking at these engines, the old ones, the new ones, everything like that, but now I want to find out a bit more about Rob Herrod and what your background is.
Yeah, it's a long story. Like as a child, my father had a BP service station, and I used to go there as a child from probably 7 or 8 years old. Grew up learning service basically. That's probably the main thing I picked up from working in the service station with my dad. But I always wanted to be a mechanic and wanted to be an engineer and so forth, and didn't like school and done work experience at the end of third form, which I think they call year 9 these days. And my father said, "You don't want to go back to school, do you?" I said, "No." So I basically left school and started an apprenticeship as a mechanic under my father.
And I guess, you know, fast forward to the actual business. I mean, how did that all start?
Fortunate enough that Tickford in their early days, when they become part of Ford, Howard Marsden, who was a stalwart back in the days of the XYZ HOs and so forth, and had a Nissan Motorsport at the time, he was working at Tickford. And Jack Nasser, who was the president of Ford globally at the time, I used to do some work on Jack's own private vehicles. Jack asked Howard to come back and run motorsport for Ford. And Howard had nowhere internally to do work for Ford. So he came to me and made us basically a skunk works Ford Motor Company. Yeah, Howard becomes sort of like, I suppose you call him a mentor to me. And the rest is history. You know, we've sort of gone on. I've just become the Ford guy because I was just excited that the motor industry was changing so fast. How are you going to keep up with not modifying, let's say just servicing everyday cars, because you need computers, you need special tools. So I just decided I was going to become a Ford specialist, and it all just evolved all on its own.
And I guess, you know, now, so looking at your business in Melbourne is obviously very different to what you do here. What's the sort of main day-to-day work that they do down there?
Very, very fortunate. I've worked very, very hard and got very good relationship with Ford Australia, Ford US. We're a Ford Performance parts dealer. For the last 5 or 6 years, we've won top 10 Ford Performance parts dealer awards in the US, which sort of makes us the #1 outside the US. So I have great relationships there. Back in 2020, we put together a collaboration with Herrod and Ford. We built 500 special Mustangs called the R-Spec Mustang that was built out of Ford Broadmeadows under my guidance. So it was a pretty honourable experience, but that's led us onto still modifying Mustangs. So with forever, you go to my shop now, there's probably 10, 15 Mustangs, maybe more in there right now, where I think comfortably I could say we've probably supercharged well over 2,000 Mustangs in my shop in Melbourne.
Yeah, wow.
So it's pretty good. I've got my eldest boys down there. He's running the shop with a team of really good people that have worked for me for a long time. and I can be up here doing what I'm doing here, and I can go down to Melbourne. And to me, doing the supercar engines is a great offshoot of my road car business. And that's why I love the fact that the engine is more road car based than what our Gen 2 engine was.
Well, looks like you've got plenty of work to do here. So
yeah, thank you.
I should probably let you get back to work.
Mark, thank you.
It's really
appreciate your
and
time.
look forward to seeing you at the track.
Thank you so much.